My name is Paul Andrews, and this is my story of how my wife's personal hygiene ruined our marriage and family. My wife, now ex-wife, is named Sarah Ridgway Andrews. We met on a blind date set up by mutual friends. She had just graduated from college and was working at First United National Bank. Her business management degree got her into the junior management program. I had just started working at Allied Accounting and was new in town, so one of my coworkers, Steve, set me up on a double date. Steve and Brenda had been dating for about 6 months, and they decided that Sarah and I would find common interests. There's nothing like the excitement of the evening when an accountant and a business intern go on their first blind date. It was pretty obvious that we had one thing in common. We weren't going to have sex that evening. I would have preferred to have this medium-looking blonde woman rubbing her body against me. But that didn't happen, as she acted very wary when I touched her. If she had curves, she definitely hid them behind a tight sweater, long skirt, and jacket. We had a stimulating conversation about our career prospects. We both expressed our dreams for the future. Surprisingly, they turned out to be very similar. We both came from middle-income families and lived in more modest communities than our current big city. I wanted to be an entrepreneur and use my accounting background to be able to distinguish a good deal from just a good deal. She wanted to have a stable life while climbing the corporate ladder, gradually working her way up, unless you count the 2 or 3 times she took maternity leave to have children. It gave me confidence that one day someone would have sex with her, maybe even more than 2 or 3 times. The evening ended with me walking her back to her apartment, where she gave me a quick, non-passionate hug and thanked me for the evening. It was better than drinking beer alone in her small apartment. On Monday, Steve came into my office and greeted me. I commented, "You must have pulled off a big score with Brenda on Saturday night since you're handing out high fives." Steve smiled and said, "Yes, Saturday night went well for me, but I was congratulating you. Sarah couldn't stop talking about you, Brenda. You made a big impression on this girl, a friend of mine. She told Brenda to tell Brenda to have me call her. Just like high school, isn't it?" It was a nice evening, but I don't think it made that much of an impression. I think I'd better call her. Apparently, Sarah knew better than I did that we could make a great couple. After a couple months of dating, I found out what was hiding under those heavy clothes. This woman could have been a Playboy Playmate hottie. Large round breasts, firm flat stomach, and well-formed hips. She tried to dress conservatively so as not to attract unnecessary attention. Through a combination of great sex and a wonderful personal relationship built on admiration, trust, and caring for each other, we fell in love with each other. The marriage was a foregone conclusion, as were the 2 children, Hannah and Miranda. The sex was great before the kids came along and amazing after they came along. We bought a starter home and the obligatory minivan. Sarah was moving up in her career and had more responsibilities. I did very well at Allied Accounting and was given a leave of absence to get my CPA certification. Mr. Karstadt, the owner of Allied, took me under his wing and taught me much more than any books or courses. One day after work, he suggested I go to dinner with him. He told me that he was negotiating the sale of the firm to a large accounting group. He said, "Paul, you're my best employee, but you won't thrive around the new owner. I think you need to leave Allied before the buyout and start your own practice. They will kill your entrepreneurial spirit and leave you a miserable person who goes to work every day. You have an entrepreneurial nature that you need to realize. Please take note of this and start planning for your future. I'll make sure you take some clients with you when you leave so you don't starve to death." This took me by surprise, and I didn't know what to say other than thank you to someone I admired and respected. Sarah and I talked non-stop about it over the weekend. She said, "Just keep up the good work and stay an employee at your new firm. Forget risky entrepreneurship and work hard to get promoted in the coming years. You can make a good salary as a CPA at a big firm." Yeah, if that's what I want to do for the next 35 years. Sarah, I'm afraid I'm going to start resenting the debits and credits I'll have to run through every day. This is my chance to break out of my routine and do something I've dreamed of doing since I was in high school. I'll start by working here at home while I build up a clientele. And then I'll move into the office. Paul, I don't think that's a very smart move. We have 2 small children. We can't take any more risks, was her wise advice to the banker. I can't wait until the end of my life to take the risk. For me, it's now or maybe never. Sarah pouted. I don't like it, but I can't stop you. Make sure it works or I'll get really mad at you. And in fact, don't expect me to fund this disaster. I'm opening a new checking account for my income. I'll be paying half of the household expenses. You better be able to cover the other half. I'll do my best, Sarah, I replied, but I wanted to say, thanks for doing nothing, bitch. She relented, saying she wouldn't act as a co-borrower in my new business. If things go wrong, she wants to be on the sidelines. Since she acted like a bitch, I'm not going to do business with her bank, but I'm sure she'll support me when I start making a lot of money. Things were tight for the next year, with Sarah bringing home money steadily and my contribution being erratic. By the end of the second year, I was earning a little more than Sarah, but she preferred that I bring in a steady monthly income. Boring. My business model was changing as I was consulting more with prospects and clients rather than just keeping records of money received and spent. It was what I wanted to do, and I succeeded at it. Since I was making more money than Sarah, I started putting more money into my startup. I set my personal income at Sarah's level and invested amounts higher than that. What I liked to do was this. If I had an outstanding business, I would reduce or waive consulting fees to get a share of the profits. I would take 5% to 15% of the property for my consulting services and reduce the fee for the monthly accounting portion of their business. This worked very well for both parties. It reduced the required startup capital for potential clients and also gave them the opportunity to get my sound analysis and advice at any time. Auditing the firm was not possible since I was an investor, but I was fine with that. The growth in the value of the company was far greater than the accounting fees I was losing. The company could buy me out at any time at an agreed-upon market value formula. The only person who wasn't happy with this arrangement was Sarah. She really didn't like me investing in startups, so I stopped telling her about it. My accounting corporation's revenues were not reaching the level she thought they should be. Instead of revenue, I was building net worth, but it wasn't showing up on the balance sheet because the stock I bought was valued at the actual purchase price, which was pretty low. Because I had employees with deep knowledge and ability, I allowed myself the luxury of spending more time with my children. The 3 months of tax season were a different story. I tried not to miss a single play, concert, or sporting event they participated in. I managed all the parent-teacher conferences without Sarah. These were good years as the kids were excited, and Sarah and I did better than average for our age. Because of her knowledge and work ethic, Sarah was promoted to assistant vice president of the bank, where she had several people reporting to her. As a result of this promotion, she decided that we needed a bigger and nicer house to match her status as a bank employee. I told her we'd better wait, to which she replied, "Until next Saturday." She went to the showing and signed a contract to move. I was not happy about this, but there was nothing I could do about it. Through my membership in the Chamber of Commerce, I became friends with several loan officers from her bank. They told me that Sarah used to call me little accountant. This disrespect began to manifest itself at home in snide remarks about how other accounting firms were succeeding, and I seemed to be napping. I wasn't invited to join her at the bank's Christmas or summer party. Not that I thought it was a fun time, but I felt she didn't want me around her professionally. It was time to talk to her about our relationship. On Saturday afternoon, I cornered her in the living room and asked her to sit with me for a few minutes. With an expression of disgust, she said, "Can it wait? I'm trying to finish my laundry." "Thank you, but I think we need to talk about it. It can wait until tonight. Will you carve out 15 minutes in your schedule?" Over my shoulder as she walked away, I heard her, "Yes, I can." Then she went back to her business. I didn't bring it up for the rest of the day because I wanted to use it as an example of her ignoring me and thinking my wishes didn't matter. My attempt to talk after the kids went to bed was thwarted because she was tired. On Sunday morning, we couldn't talk because the kids were getting ready for Sunday school, and then we all went to church together. When the girls went outside to chat with the neighborhood kids, I saw her grab her purse and head for the door. I stopped her and asked her, "Do you have a few minutes to talk to me?" She snapped back, "Why have you been bugging me about this all weekend? You run around me and whine like a little boy demanding mommy's attention. Can't you see I'm leaving to help mom with the checkbook? I'll be back in an hour. Is it possible to wait that long?" "It's been 24 hours since I asked for 15 minutes of your time. I can wait another hour." 4 hours had passed when she entered the house and hurried into the kitchen to prepare dinner. Of course, I intervened in the conversation. We were halfway through dinner when I turned to her and said, I think now would be a good time to talk, and an indignant expression came over her face. I think we're getting further and further apart, and I'm really worried about our marriage. Sarah's fork dropped onto her plate, and the girls turned their heads to look at me. We don't talk to each other like we used to, and I feel like you don't respect me as a husband. I feel like we need to talk about this before it becomes a real problem. Gritting her teeth, she said, "This is not the time or place for that conversation. I'm surprised you brought it up in front of the girls. You should be ashamed of yourself." Sarah, by your own actions, by ignoring me for 30 hours after I asked for a conversation, you have shut me out again. Is there something going on here that I should know about? She pushed back her chair, carried her plate to the kitchen, and walked out of the house. It seems our conversation took less time than I expected. My daughters were shaken by the confrontation. Miranda tearfully asked, "Are we all getting divorced?" I calmly said, "No, honey, no one is going to get divorced. Remember how you and your sister used to fight sometimes? Well, moms and dads fight sometimes too. But that doesn't mean we don't love each other or don't love you and Hannah. Mom didn't run away from home, she just went for a drive." That seemed to reassure them both, but it didn't reassure me. I cleaned up the kitchen, did a little work in my office, and then put the girls and myself to bed. I went to the bedroom. If she didn't like it, she could sleep on the couch. It was about midnight when she went into the bedroom. She undressed and walked over to the bed. I lifted the covers so she could join me. She pressed herself against me and said, "I'm not saying I was wrong, but I'll try to treat you with the respect I want from my husband." I hugged her and whispered, "I think that's wonderful. I want to be the best husband to you." That diffused the tension in the house for a while. A few years later, she was promoted to Vice President of Compliance, which meant learning about and ensuring the bank's compliance with FDIC, Federal Reserve, and Comptroller of the Currency rules and regulations. She had the perfect philosophy for the role. In her view, no action should be taken that has not been specifically approved by the appropriate governing body. This is the exact opposite of my philosophy. If there are no rules against it, everything can be done by law. Is there any doubt that this has caused strife in our family? Good thing she didn't know about my investments. They were legal, but fiscal people like her didn't approve of them. Just about that time, she started going to bachelorette parties on Tuesdays. The longer she attended these events, the later she came home. The kids were already 16 and 14, so they didn't need a nanny, but they needed parental supervision and involvement. I was always there for them. One Tuesday night, I heard furious swearing coming from the master bathroom and went upstairs to see what was wrong. She was standing at the sink yelling, "Shit, shit! What's the matter?" She growled as if I'd left a turd in the sink. My damn wedding ring fell in the sink. "Do you think you have a chance of saving it, or should I call a plumber?" I really didn't like the hint of my abilities. Looking under the sink, I said, "If it's left in the siphon, I'll get it out. It'll only take a minute." Again, in an accusatory tone, as if I had dropped the ring, she said, "Don't worry. I won't need it today anyway." Wow, I thought. You go on a date and you don't need wedding rings. This was alarming, and I urgently needed more information. I realized that with my current bitchy attitude, it was better to keep quiet but be vigilant. Throwing a quick glance at her, I saw that she had moved into the bedroom and was putting on some sexy panties. Lingerie I hadn't seen before. She tried to avoid my gaze at the way she was dressed. "Girls' night out? Just like any other Tuesday night, don't you remember?" She snapped back. Feeling like I'd accomplished nothing, I went to the garage to get pliers to remove the snare. She slipped out of the house without a word. Since the drain was on her half of the double sink, I had to get a bunch of her stuff under the sink before I could get to the trap. I was surprised to see a plain brown box lying on the back seat where the toilet paper was stored. I was even more surprised when I looked inside and saw an enema kit and a syringe. What the hell? If anything, she was always complaining of irritable bowel syndrome and diarrhea. Although I thought it was irritable bitch syndrome. Since when did she need to be sprayed? Pulling out the contents, I discovered the nozzle was wet. This is serious. It's probably true. The husband is always the last to know. But what did I really know right now wasn't enough? When working on a new business plan, I always try to learn everything about a company, good and bad. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to start my research right now. Not quite now, since I still had to get under the sink to find her damn ring. Maybe she'll need it, maybe she won't. Time would tell. I picked up a pencil and marked the spot on the floor where the brown box had been. I wanted to see if it would be moved within the next week. I also took a picture of a couple items to see if she put the equipment back in the box the same way I put it. She got home around midnight, got undressed, closed the bathroom door, and started taking a shower. I tried to pretend I was asleep, but if she had touched my chest, she would have found my heart pounding like crazy. She flopped into bed so hard that I felt like I had to act like I had just woken up. Then I heard her light giggle. Bitch. The next morning I got up early, mostly because I couldn't sleep. Before I showered, I thoughtfully closed the bathroom door. Really, I wanted to check the brown box, and sure enough, the box was slid open. The nozzle was still wet, and the box had been moved an inch from my line. Someone is doing something serious. Using a Ziploc bag, I carefully collected her stinky panties and sent them off for analysis. For over 3 weeks now, there has not been the slightest trace of it on them. Since I worked as an accountant, I was well aware of what happens with the distribution of assets in a divorce. I have done several appraisals for husbands and wives in divorce. Sarah will get the house until the girls go to college, and I will be paying alimony and won't be able to be with them as often as I am now. I probably won't pay alimony if my investments don't count. She doesn't think they are worth anything, and neither do I. I wasn't going to pay for a house where she could have fun with another guy while my girls were left unsupervised. That wasn't going to happen. Now that I have the information I need, I am starting to develop a plan of action. The most important thing for me is to keep custody of my girls. I can always make money. I've proven that. I've proven I'm a good father. Now I need to prove she's a bad mother. Poison came to mind. Not chemical poison, but emotional poison. Sarah is a perfectionist and expects perfection from her staff and family. When something goes wrong, it drives her crazy. The simplest problems become huge for her. When she is angry, she becomes rude to her staff, me and the kids. I use her venom to discourage the kids from staying with me after the divorce. Then, I get the house and the girls. Quietly, I slip over to her alarm clock and turn it off. She hates people who are late for work. After a late and obviously stressful night, she probably wanted to sleep in longer. The kids came in for breakfast and wondered where Mom was, and I told them she came in late and was probably putting herself to bed. They understood, as they like to sleep in when they have the chance. After watching the conversations she had on her cell phone until late at night, I pulled up the video playlist and turned on silent playback. Hopefully, by the time she gets up, the phone will be dead. Wednesday morning, she has a staff meeting, which she says is very important. An hour later, I hear yelling and my name is spoken in vain. I guess it's my fault she overslept after partying late last night with some guy. I took the opportunity to hide from her screaming by going into the garage. There was enough air pumped out of one of the tires to set off the sensor on the dashboard of her Lexus. She hated it when the alert obscured the screen. She'd go crazy looking at that screen all the way to work. Hannah and Miranda didn't escape her wrath as she ran around the house trying to get dressed, comb her hair, and put on makeup at the same time. While she was in the garage, I switched the door settings to lock so she couldn't open the roll-up door. As you might expect, running out of the garage, she hit the open button and didn't notice that the door didn't go up. She crashed her back into the garage door, crumpling the bottom 2 panels. The 3 of us went to the door and saw, but did not hear, the screaming woman hit the steering wheel. As she moved the Lexus forward, I straightened the panels and lifted the door, letting out a horrified squeal. Sarah flew out of the garage with a clatter, nearly hitting the mailbox. We could hear her screaming, "Goddamn asshole," for the entire block. This is going to be more fun than I thought. I wonder what she'll do when she tries to call the office with a dead cell phone. The less I hear from her, the better. I hugged Hannah and Miranda and told them, "Mom is a little tense right now. She'll feel better when she gets home tonight. She still loves you, and she doesn't love me very much." Then, all 3 of us laughed. The alarm clock in our bedroom was now turned up to maximum volume. I let her make sure the alarm clock was on. Unlike my spouse, I got to work on time that morning. My coworkers always know it's a good day when I walk in the door whistling. My good mood lasted until 10 a.m., when my cell phone vibrated so hard it almost fell off my desk. I thought, geez, that must be my dear wife calling. "Good morning, darling." That was all I had time to say before the profanity started. In a shrill voice, I heard, "You need to get your ass down here and fix my tire. I almost got killed driving that dangerous car. If you had let me have that Mercedes I wanted, we wouldn't have this problem. Now fix it. I said nonchalantly, you have AAA insurance. All you have to do is call them, and they'll take care of everything. Fuck you, she replied. From what she said, I knew we weren't going to have anything that night. Since the morning had gone so well, I told my assistant that I had some errands to run, and that I would be back after lunch. The first thing I did was to go to a security system store and buy some small cameras for the house and a voice recorder that I could hide in my purse. I needed to know my enemies and what they were doing. The next stop was to go home and install cameras in the living room and bedroom. I made the panels in the garage usable, but they weren't pretty. They screamed, "Some dumb jerk drove into my butt," for all the neighbors to see and smirk at. Back at work, I went through all my personal banking and investment files. We only had one joint credit card, and I canceled it. Our only joint bank account was for household needs, so I left it open, but reminded myself to make sure her half was transferred into the account every payday. As usual, I got home before Sarah and was already making dinner when I heard the creak and groan of the garage door opening. The FBI couldn't have hit the door any harder than Sarah did. Both girls sitting at the kitchen table screamed and got into their panties in terror. The witch approached me threateningly and said, "I've never had such a shitty day. I'm going to go upstairs and soak in my tub." The girls and I ate dinner quietly, whispering like 12-year-old kids. I went upstairs and asked if she wanted dinner, and she threw a bar of soap at me and growled, "If I wanted supper, I'd have told you. Now leave me alone." It was the perfect moment to make a small slit in her purse and put the recorder inside the lining. I went downstairs and fell asleep on the couch in the living room. I absolutely hated to be in the same bed with her when her alarm clock beeped at full volume tomorrow morning. The blast of the latest rap song on the radio alarm clock was preceded by my spouse's shrill "Mother Bucker," followed by the screams of two frightened teenagers. There wasn't a sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps who made more noise in the early morning than the ladies in my house that day. While Sarah was in the bathroom, I took the opportunity to go to the garage and put some dark brown grease from my lawnmower on the seat of her car. After sitting on that grease on the way to work, it might have appeared to those around her that she had shit her pants on the way. This time literally, not figuratively. We got about as much bile and rage from her as we had the night before. I also wore out the skirt she was wearing the night before, just to be convincing and hopefully to have someone to blame it on. Her assistant Linda, who was married to one of my friends, called me and told me about how Sarah had discovered her trashy skirt. She told me that Hurricane Sarah had reached landfall and everyone should be on alert. Over the next few days, I stopped torturing her. Little things started to happen, like one of the two diamond earrings left on the counter disappeared. The dress she wore last Tuesday had a red wine stain on it that she had no memory of. The lining on her favorite shoes was beginning to peel off. Because I knew where her password book was, many of the websites she used were refusing her entry. When she got behind the wheel of her Lexus, turned a corner, or hit the brakes, a ball bearing would spin in her car door. Every day or so, some little thing went wrong for her. For her, it was death by 1,000 cuts, and now there are only 500 of them left. And now the biggest challenge of all, she came home after work on Tuesday to change her clothes and go to a bachelorette party. To no one in the house, she didn't say a word. Before she undressed, she made sure the bathroom door was locked. Everything was the same as the previous Tuesday, including the wet enema nozzle. Everything was exactly the same, except I was following her on the locator on her cell phone. According to the locator on her cell phone, her first stop for the night was Bonefish Grill. From Bonefish, she went to a dance bar called O'Hara's. I wasn't interested in what she did at the club. I was interested in who she left with. I had been following her movements from home, so I got out of the car and drove to O'Hara's to follow her to the next place. Just as I was finishing my coffee in the parking lot, Sarah and some guy came out of the store holding hands. They hugged and kissed for a long time before parting ways. He drove off in his car and she followed him. I stayed at least a block behind them, letting the locator do its job. The moneybags pulled into the Motel 6 just off the highway. From the street, I saw them enter a room with access to the street. Since they would be there for a couple of hours, I pulled into the parking lot and wrote down the make, model, and license plate number of her boyfriend's car. While in the dark parking lot, I let enough air out of the driver's side front tire to make it noticeable and sent a low tire pressure signal back to the dashboard. There was a truck parked in the lot, so I found a piece of grease and smeared it on the windshield. I knew full well that the first thing it would do was turn on the windshield wipers. Then the whole windshield would be a mess. Tomorrow, it would be interesting to hear what was on the tape recorder in her purse. The information I needed was now in my hands, and I was only halfway to my goal of blowing her up. It was past 1 o'clock in the morning when she burst into the bedroom, undressed, and walked to the bathroom, slamming the door. It was probably time for her to shower and put on makeup. No one touched the alarm clock or the phone that night. I wanted these events to seem random. A couple hours later, when she was already snoring, I got out of bed and pulled a voice-activated voice recorder out of her purse. I downloaded it to my laptop, charged it, and put it in her purse. The next morning, after Sarah and the girls left the house, I listened to the recording. It was noisy at dinner and at the club, but the recorder was recording what was going on at the Motel 6 quite effectively. I also learned that they hung out every Tuesday night and spent every other Thursday afternoon at the Hyatt Hotel during business hours. It was Sarah's turn to book a room at the Hyatt, and they made fun of the conservative bank president for his unknowing complicity. They used their corporate cards to pay for a luxurious night at the Hyatt. Since the bank's main office was not far from the Hyatt, they often used it to meet with bank employees from out of town. Kit remarked how good her husband was with numbers, while increasing the number of times he had entertained my, up to that point, wife. Sarah laughed that my calculator would explode if I knew how many times Keith had entertained her, something that wasn't available to her husband. So when do you plan to divorce your accountant husband? Right after my daughter Miranda leaves for college. I love my girls, but I don't want to spend the best years of my life chasing soccer balls with them. He's the best mom in the world, and I'm glad he thinks so. I don't know why, but I just can't be around him anymore. I've done everything I can to make him more successful, but he just wants to be a regular guy, with no goals. He's just wasting his life. If you dislike him so much, why don't you divorce him right now? Make him pay alimony and spend more time with me. Grinning, she said, if I got divorced and got alimony, I'd still have to pay for childcare, a maid, and a cook. Now my little sister does it for free, and she also brings money into our joint account. I don't have to pay as many household expenses, plus I can stash a good portion of my paycheck where he can't find it in a divorce. I use it for household expenses while building up my secret stash. Speaking of divorce, when are you going to pull the trigger on your frigid wife? That date, my dear, has already been set. Her father demanded that I sign a prenuptial agreement before we were married. I only signed it when we added a term of 20 years. 3 more years and I would have 50% of her multi-million-dollar stock portfolio. Laughing, she said, see how timely it is? The expiration date of your prenup falls around the time Miranda goes to college. Then, we'll both be able to leave. Hearing that conversation, I couldn't believe there were such selfish and conniving people on Earth. You know what? They deserve each other. They would have a terrible time together as they would both try to cheat each other sexually and financially. They were worried about their safety. They alternated weeks, booking a room at the Hyatt so neither of them would rent a room more than once a month. Now she checks all the tires and that the garage door is open before driving the car out. However, her obnoxious and disrespectful behavior continued to get the attention of both me and the girls. As expected, the report showed that her lover's marks were found on the pirate's underwear. I now had enough evidence to go to a lawyer and start filing divorce papers. I told Jeff Green, my attorney, to demand full custody of the girls since I had been in contact with them most of the time. Judging by the way their mother was acting, it would be a fluke if the girls wanted to communicate with her at all. Jeff said, I will add, but it will be difficult. I proposed a plan where we would own the house 50-50 until it was sold after both girls left for college. We would both keep our own investments and retirement funds. Since I have limited my taxable income to about the same as hers, neither of us has to pay child support. She has to pay me the usual childcare allowance, including college tuition. We save enough for tuition, housing, books, and food, but not enough for outings, etc. When she became a full-time VP, she joined the bank's deferred compensation program. I'll leave that account alone in case she wants my partnership investment. Then I'll bring up her deferred compensation to parry her claim. In preparation for the divorce, I started taking important items out of the house and putting them in storage. I also backed up my data every day on an external hard drive, keeping it separate from my computer. I planned to keep the house, but I didn't know how rowdy Sarah would be when she received the subpoena. On the advice of a lawyer, I hired a private investigator to find out who Keith was and where he worked. To speed up the search, I gave him the license plate information. Every year at the end of the third quarter of the fiscal year, the bank begins the budgeting process for the following year. All employees fill out questionnaires, and each department must reassess its performance and budget. At the end of this process, senior management has a formal dinner/program/dance at the Hyatt Hotel. This is a tuxedo and evening gown event for the senior officers and their spouses, and many of the attendees book a room at the Hyatt. Sarah told me about this event years ago, but by the time she became a member of this group, I was considered unworthy. She kept reminding me of this event, and if I was more successful, I could participate the following year. She thought it motivated me, but I didn't care as long as I didn't get bored in the company of these people. Almost daily, I went through her closets and drawers looking for other information about her infidelity. The week before the celebration, I discovered a new shoebox that was wrapped in the back of her closet. That's where I always started looking. In the back of a closet or drawer, it was a pair of very fancy Jimmy Choo evening shoes. There was no receipt, so I used Google and got slapped in the face. These shoes cost over $1,000. Since the appointment was in a few days, I had to think of how to counteract this. Replacing the Choo shoes with an old beat-up pair of yard shoes or a pair of Crocs came to mind. Instead, I took the shoes to the workshop, clamped the heel in a table vise, and very carefully turned the tall, narrow heel a few degrees to the side. The shoes were rewrapped and put back in their original place. Finding her brown box gave me a lesson in how to handle delicate items. The day before the celebration, the investigator called me and asked me to come to his office because he had some information. As he sat me down at his desk, he informed me that her lover was Keith Miller, a senior loan officer at Sarah's bank. I thought, this could seriously affect their careers. They don't report to each other, but her main responsibility is to make sure the loan department follows the rules and regulations. And that's on top of the rule against sexual relations between employees. They're on thin ice. I told him, great information, and could you set up some cameras for the senior management meeting at the Hyatt Hotel on Friday night? He already had a picture of Sarah, and I asked him to shoot her walking and dancing. We were both happy. He got another check, and I got some really solid information for the consummation of our marriage. The movie I watched Friday night was hilarious, so much so that the detective laughed the whole time we were watching. She walked around like she was drunk. The pressure of all her weight on that tiny heel joint, which was off by a few degrees, was pushing her feet outward, causing her to stumble. She crashed into tables and chairs. At one table, 2 bottles of red wine toppled over on everyone. I plan to submit it to America's Funniest Video as soon as Sarah signs the permission slip. Yeah, sure. Of course, Sarah and Keith secluded themselves in his hotel room for a night out. It was all documented by a tiny video camera slipped under the door of their hotel. Isn't it great how technology has improved our lives over the past few years? Although Sarah got home before noon on Saturday, we didn't see her until late Sunday morning. Spiritually speaking, she should have gone to church that morning, but she stayed home. Sarah used to always come home from work on Wednesday afternoons tired. I suppose it had to do with late classes on Tuesday night. She would walk into the house and immediately lie down in the bubble bath. This Wednesday was going to be different. I was going to change the amount of hot water in her tub. She barked what might be called a hello as she walked to the bathroom. I waited for her to find the right combination on the hot and cold water faucet for the tub. When I heard the sink running, I realized she was washing herself and went to the back room. Our house has separate water lines to each faucet and a manifold hanging on the wall that regulates the amount of water in each line. I quickly shut off the hot water line in the bathroom, allowing cold water to fill the tub. As soon as I heard the water stop flowing into the tub, I turned the hot water valve back on. I heard a horrible sound from my lovely wife as she slid into the tub of cold water. Sure enough, the bubbles made the water slippery, and she was wriggling around trying to grab onto something to pull herself out of the cool water. When I rushed into the bathroom to help her, she completely ripped the towel rack off the wall in her attempt to get out. This put her back under the cold water. It cost me a lot of labor not to laugh out loud. Finally, I pulled her out, swearing, slipping, shivering, and dousing herself with water. Of course, she slapped me in the face for not having hot water. With a scream, Both girls flew into the bathroom and saw their mother throwing another fit. She then turned to her daughters. "You dirty little bitches, you used up all the hot water and I couldn't relax. Damn you." She stomped into the bedroom to get dressed and the girls burst into tears. They turned to her to tell her they hadn't used the hot water, but she shouted at them, "Shut up! I don't want to hear pathetic excuses. Get out of my sight." Which they did, running away crying. This is worse than I thought. I didn't think she would go after them. After me, yes, but not after them. I made the real mistake of thinking where her anger might come out. Then she turned to me. "What the hell are you looking at, asshole? Fix my bathtub. You think you can do one simple thing in my house?" I invited her into the tub and turned on the hot water again. It was very hot. I took her hand and splashed hot water on it and said, "You have a lot of hot water." I stared at her for a few seconds without saying anything, and then I went elsewhere with the girls for dinner. To hell with the dinner I was making. While the girls were crying, I stopped the car a few blocks away from the house to comfort them. I told them, "I'm sorry you had to endure that tirade. You didn't deserve it. You are wonderful children and I am very proud of you. Please forgive your mother for her actions and forgive me for letting this happen. Forgive me for that." That calmed them down and reminded me that I had to be careful when separating the three of us from Sarah. It was too much fun torturing her. By the time we snuck back into the house, it was already time to go to bed. I left the kitchen utensils in place and settled down on the couch in the living room. In the middle of the night, I felt a presence, like something evil was coming toward me. And so it was. Sarah was standing there looking at me. "Yes?" was the only sound I could utter. She just stood there. Finally, she said, "I shouldn't have yelled at the girls like that. It wasn't their fault in the slightest. I must have turned the wrong knob. Over the last month, I've been so depressed and upset about so many things that have gone wrong. Flat tires, garage doors, faulty evening shoes. Every little thing irritates me to the max. I need to get my life back on track." With those words, she turned and walked back upstairs. I think that was all she had to say to me. The next week, I received a real gift. One of my investment partners had a 2-bedroom apartment in Breckenridge, Colorado, and he wanted to know if I wanted to rent it. It was the week between Christmas and New Year's Eve, and the agreement was for a year, but the tenant said no. Then my buddy left a deposit and offered me a half-price rental. I said I would call him back. The girls had been desperate since their mother cursed them. Sarah apologized to them, but her harsh words still lodged in their brains and feelings. I asked them if they would join me for a week in Breckenridge to go skiing. I guess so, as they pounced on me, kissing me on the cheek and hugging me. That same night, I booked plane tickets to Denver and back for the 4 of us. I was going to give Sarah one last chance to save our marriage by being together as a family. I paid extra to be able to cancel the ticket. Sarah came home, cleaned herself up, and dressed in casual clothes when she came down for dinner. I asked one of the girls to ask her mom if she wanted to join us on the ski trip. The choice fell on Hannah because she couldn't sit still and would have blabbed anyway. Hannah said, "Mom, Dad rented a 2-bedroom condo in Breckenridge for the time between Christmas and New Year's. Can you carve out some time to join us? It would be so much fun." Sarah smiled and started to say something. She was thinking about something. About what? I didn't know. Then her eyebrows rose and a smirk appeared on her lips. "I'd love to, honey, but it's the end of the year and it's very important to the bank that all the money be properly accounted for on December 31st. In order to do that, I have to stay in town. I'm sorry." I was sorry too. Sorry that Hannah was disappointed. Sorry that Sarah had declined the invitation with a lame, weak explanation. The compliance department had not the slightest thing to do with the bank's year-end balance sheet or profit and loss statement. Not one bit. The compliance department has no money for the balance sheet. You don't have to be a comptroller to know that. The reason for the raised eyebrows and smirk was that she saw this as a chance to spend 7 nights in our bedroom with that asshole Keith. The next week, my private investigator hooked up the cameras to Wi-Fi so I could have instant access to them while I was in Colorado. There was a scene at home that I really wanted to see. Not the sex of 2 adulterers, but something else. The day we left for Colorado, I smeared her tip with jalapeno pepper juice. If she wanted hot pleasure, she would get it. As we left for the airport, Sarah was a pleasant mom, saying, "Be careful," and giving them a hug. I appreciated her brief hug and kiss. I told her, "I love you, Sarah," and got a quick "I love you too" response. The girls and I endured the plane ride and the rental car ride to the condo with no problems. Hannah and Miranda had never been to the Rocky Mountains and went out on the deck to enjoy the view and the scent of pine trees. Mission: I set up my computer and connected to the Wi-Fi camera in our house. As expected, Sarah arrived at the house at 6 p.m. and went straight to the master bathroom for her pre-holiday ritual. I didn't need a camera in the bedroom. I wasn't interested in watching them fiddling. I could see the landing, the living room, and the kitchen. Suddenly, Sarah stumbled down the stairs and screamed that she was on fire. Apparently, she had discovered that her life-saving tube of preparation H had been hit with jalap juice. She waved her arms around trying to cool her crotch. Her face was bright red and contorted with pain. I thought about how much fun my private investigator would have had watching this. She ran over to the refrigerator and pulled the ice cube lever. She and the ice cubes fell to the tile floor as she tried to shove the soothing cubes in to cool everything down inside. I started laughing as I watched her create this lipstick. Finally, she sat down on the cabinet and tried to catch her breath. After about 15 minutes, she started reintroducing the ice cubes. Looks like her lover Keith won't be welcome in her lower guts tonight. I wonder how long it will take her ass to recover. It would be a shame if they didn't have fun all week while the kids and I were gone. Too bad. The three of us went to the Christmas decorating and lighting of downtown Breckenridge to eat pizza. What a beautiful place with a foot of snow on everything. After eating pizza, we started heading back to the condo when the girls heard music they liked and realized where it was coming from. It was a teen club designed to entertain teens while parents were having fun elsewhere. Hannah asked, "Can we come in for a few minutes, Daddy?" Thankfully, I agreed because these girls had been through a lot in the past couple months. The dance floor was full and the sounds of laughter beckoned. The girls wanted to stay, but I wasn't about to leave them alone on their first night in a new city. I found a free table away from the DJ and told my daughters to come check on me from time to time. This was perfect for me, as I could read my emails without thinking about the girls ignoring me. It wasn't long before they attracted some guys and started dancing, laughing, and talking. They would look back at me and I would raise my Diet Coke, letting them know it was okay. There were a lot of adults there watching their kids. One woman on the other side of the dance floor was very attractive, and as we both looked around the floor for our offspring, we caught each other's eyes and smiled. This attractive woman had two boys who stopped at her table to get money, food, or sodas. My girls seemed to spend more time with them instead of playing on the playground. When I finished writing my message, I looked up and saw an attractive woman walking toward me. All the other men were watching her too. She was wearing ski pants that seemed to have been sprayed on so thinly that you could see the freckles on her ass. Her sweater was tight-fitting too, and it gave off a warmth, even though the temperature outside was below freezing. She stopped at my desk and said, "You must be Hannah and Miranda's father. Why don't you come and join the rest of your family instead of staying here alone?" I tried not to jump up too quickly but still replied, "I'd love to. My girls are good judges of character, so I guess that's why they're sitting at your table. My name is Donna, and Zach and Misha are my two boys, ages 16 and 14, who are about to turn 21. I smiled and replied, "They are the same age as my girls, coincidence?" And we both laughed. Donna said, "In the time I've watched your girls and then interacted with them, they are very sweet kids. You should be very proud of them." Absolutely. I can also tell that your boys seem very well-mannered. Or is that just because you watch them? Donna laughed and said, "You are very promising. I'm glad there is a father here who is as interested in watching his children as I am. I work from home, so I am the one who sends them off in the morning and meets them when they get home. They get a lot of my attention because they are now the most important part of my life." For Donna and the boys, like us, it was their first day in Breckenridge. It didn't take the four teens long to decide where and when they would ride tomorrow morning. Donna and I made some adjustments so that they would check in with us at different times. We decided that we would see the skiers off tomorrow morning, then have breakfast together and ski in the late morning and afternoon. Over the next week, Donna and I learned a lot about each other, and we both liked what we heard. She was nice to talk to about my problems with Sarah and my plan to divorce her. I didn't talk about harassing her and seeking custody of the girls. It wasn't something I was very proud of, but it was better for the girls to be with me and not that selfish slut. Donna was a widow since her husband had been killed by a drunk driver 2 years ago. It was hard for both of us to forgive the people who had changed our lives. Just talking to an understanding person was helpful for both of us. On our last night, Donna and I had dinner alone, without our teenagers. We spent the last half hour of the evening making out on the couch, without the kids. By the end of the week, we came to the conclusion that we needed to spend more time together. All four teens were of the same opinion. It was time to end my marriage to Sarah. I didn't need the videotapes of their adultery, as I had the panties with their DNA on them. When we got home, Sarah looked tired and exhausted. Maybe she should have come to Colorado with the rest of her family. We had a great time. After seeing my hot wife on our first night in Colorado, I didn't need to see what was going on in my house. It didn't matter to me in the slightest. I had Jeff draw up the papers and take them to the bank. The girls took the news of our divorce as I expected. They had seen how our relationship with Sarah had crumbled over the past 6 months. They compared my happiness with Donna to that between me and their mother. It was Hannah who moved on to the main topic. What's going to happen to me and Miranda now? Where will we go? Taking both girls in my arms, I said, "From the day you were born, you have been my whole world, and you will be for the rest of my life." During the divorce proceedings, I claimed full custody of you both, and all three of us will stay in this house. You will go to the same school with the same friends. I will continue to cook meals for you and be there for you. You will be able to see your mom as often as you want. I continued. You will have the opportunity to choose who you stay with during the divorce proceedings. Whoever gets legal custody of you will also get the house until you both go to college. It will be your decision. But remember, whoever you decide to live with, your mom and I love you. Either way, you're going to stay in this house and at your school. Don't tell me now who you want to stay with. This is a big decision and you have plenty of time before you have to choose. In the meantime, please use my car and go somewhere for dinner so your mom and I can talk. You don't want to see or hear our conversation today, okay? After I finished talking to the girls, I looked at my phone to see who had called and texted so many times while we were talking. I guessed who it was. Instead of sending the message to voicemail, I ventured out and called Sarah. Hello wasn't the first word I heard her say. She was melting the plastic of my phone with her scolding. I let her rant, rage, threaten, and scream until she ran out of air. It would have been impossible to get a word in anyway, so I let her bellow. Finally, she caught her breath and said, "Why? Why did you do this to me? Why don't you love me anymore, especially after all I've done for you and the girls? Why don't you come to the house and discuss it?" All I heard was a click. She must be coming this way. Before I knew it, she burst through the door, rushed toward me with a clatter and screamed, "Why?" I calmly said, "You've been having fun with Keith Miller every Tuesday night for I don't know how many years. How did you think it would end? I gave you a chance to start over by going to Colorado, but you decided Keith's entertainment was more important than your family. You made a choice, and now you have to pay the consequences. Sarah, you need to get everything you need from the house. Check into a hotel for a while we sort things out. I won't take your things out into the yard and burn them tonight. You can see the girls whenever you want. After you settle into the hotel, get yourself a lawyer and find out what I'm offering in the divorce. I think it's fair, but you have to decide for yourself what you want to do. In the meantime, don't bother me, except to coordinate meetings with the girls or to get your stuff. From now on, we have nothing to talk about except our divorce." I went to my office, closed the door, and listened to the clatter of suitcases against any vertical or horizontal surface. The only thing I didn't hear was tears, and that made me sad. I knew I never wanted to be with her again, and apparently the feeling was mutual. The process of changing locks, resetting codes and passwords was next on my to-do list. During the divorce proceedings, she was furious. Not that she still loved me and wanted to keep the family together. It was like she wanted to sue me, not me suing her. She wanted everyone to know that she was the one who kicked out the weak accountant because he wasn't good enough for her, not me kicking her out for cheating. She was professionally embarrassed that I had filed for divorce. Neither of us had the slightest desire to attend marriage counseling. We were done with each other. Everything good we had over the years was squeezed out of us. I was very fortunate to have successfully survived the divorce, unlike many other men. First of all, Hannah and Miranda decided they wanted to live in the house with their father. They saw their mother once every week or two. They didn't like her asking questions about me and whether I missed her. I had very little contact with her, and I was usually not around when she picked up or dropped off the girls. Sarah despised me and my little accounting firm so much that she wanted no part of it. She wanted to keep her 401k account and deferred compensation funds that she thought I didn't know about. She has to pay for childcare, plus she has better health insurance in the bank than I do. I didn't want her to find out I knew about dating Hyatt. That was planned to be used later. She moved all the furniture she thought was stylish out of the house, leaving us three unsophisticated people to use what was left of it. Sarah left all the family photos behind, as if we treated them as a shrine to her. I'm sure she had other means, but I didn't care. I needed my children and my business. They were my priority, and everything about her was secondary. Someone anonymously sent a video of Keith having fun with Sarah, Keith's wife. Of course, this caused an immediate increase in legal fees throughout the city. The whore and the asshole moved in together in a luxury apartment in a trendy part of town. After the divorce was finalized, I invited Donna and the boys to my house for the weekend. There was no sex between us as we try to set an example for our children. But that didn't mean we didn't spend time kissing and cuddling. She was the best medicine that got me through the horrible end of my marriage. We both knew where our relationship was headed. She already had a place to stay. We don't have any problems yet, but we have two 16-year-old children who love each other's company and sleep in adjoining bedrooms. These two need our constant attention. Donna was a registered nurse and worked from home for a health insurance company researching healthcare claims, so I created the perfect office for her in my home. Epilogue. A year later, I contacted a friend of mine who worked for a CPA firm that audited a bank. I told him a story about how two senior officers at the bank had used bank credit cards to make illegal dates during work hours. He thanked me for the tip and, after the audit, brought this information to the bank's president. The bank did not want to publicly prosecute the fraudsters, but the two officers were fired. The bank also contacted its insurance company and informed them of the theft. The insurance company is now demanding that Sarah and Keith reimburse the bank. The company refused to allow them to continue working with it, essentially disqualifying them from banking jobs across the country. Having squandered much of Sarah's retirement investment, the couple moved out of their posh apartment. The company that provided the collateral sued for damages for bank credit card fraud. Keith's financial problems were compounded by the fact that his wife and children would be taking a significant portion of his income when he found work again. Too bad he didn't wait for a prenuptial agreement. Sarah works as a paralegal in a divorce attorney's office. She has learned a lot about the legal and social implications of divorce and is very helpful to her clients. After spending the day counseling others about divorce, she secludes herself in her small apartment and mentally berates herself that her own marriage ended tragically. She doesn't seem to be attracted to the successful businessmen and doctors she thinks she should have married instead of me. At the end of the year, the market value of my worthless investments was over $2 million. Looks like it's going to be a good year, especially since my wedding to Donna is scheduled for mid-June. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.